David Springett. I'm pleased to have you in my workshop. Today I would like to introduce you to elliptical turning. Now this is a skill which has been practiced in Europe since before Queen Elizabeth I was Queen of England. It is a turning skill which has become more of a mystery than a common practice. 150 years ago, when turners had to be more self-sufficient, those who knew the principle of elliptical turning and had an interest in it would most likely set to and construct their own chuck. Today, because many of us have been brought up with the understanding that elliptical turning is complicated and only performed on an ornamental lathe, that simple skill of elliptical turning is available only to a few. Now have a look at this simple wooden chuck. Made using basic woodworking skills and tools found in most workshops or garages, it will enable most turners to discover if elliptical turning is a skill they wish to develop. First, let's look at how the chuck fits together. I've made a box which fits snugly and firmly over the headstock. The purpose of this box is to hold this cam plate, upon which is fixed a circular cam. The cam can be set off-centre from the rotation of the lathe. The more it is set off-centre, the greater the elliptical shaping, and once you have decided where it's going to be set, it can be locked down and held in place. The chuck is made of 5 pieces. The first piece is the slide. It has angled sides and a tapered boss. The boss is turned on the lathe whilst the piece is held on a faceplate, and the taper on the boss matches that of the lathe mandrel. Now 2 runners are the next parts. There you see the 2 runners, and they're made up of 2 pieces glued together. One piece is just a flat piece which is glued on top of the second piece. The second piece of those joined parts has an angle planed into it, and that angle matches that of the slide. These pieces will be cut off later on the outer edge. Now that angled groove allows the slide to slip up and down between. And there are 2 other parts, the bearers, and they are fixed upon the runners, holding them in place on the slide. There they are. And they are set the diameter of the cam apart. So you can see that distance apart, the diameter of the cam. The slide here has a length of 6mm, 1/4 inch studding glued into its boss, having first been locked in place by a nut embedded into the top of the slide here. Now the studding acts as a drawbar because when it is fitted through the hollow mandrel, a nut fits on the back, the outboard end, pulling the slide boss into the mandrel. On the outer face of the runners is fixed a replaceable plywood faceplate. And there you see fixed in place, but you have to be careful. The screws must be placed so that they do not go through the slide area in the middle. Put them on the outer edges. At the end of this program I will show a parts list and approximate sizes, but as lathes vary, so adjustments may need to be made to ensure a good fit on the lathe being used. To give an idea how the chuck works, I'll rotate the lathe by hand, but first it's very important to set the tool rest so that the marking pen is exactly at centre height. So bring the centre in and then adjust the tool rest so that the pen is exactly at centre height, touching the lathe centre. With the tailstock away, move the tool rest into the work. Now before I start marking, I'll just rotate the lathe, make sure nothing catches. Now, pen in place. I'm not going to mark straight away, just check that it's going to fit this oval. Yes, I think I'll manage that. So now, put the pen against faceplate and rotate, and there you see the oval being shaped. Now, as the lathe rotates, the centre slide rotates also, a little like a propeller. The bearers rub on the offset circular cam, which pull the runners. Just put this in place, back and forth. First one way, then the other. And as the runners move back and forth and also rotate, the movement on the faceplate becomes a smooth oval. Do not run the lathe at more than 500 RPM. When the lathe is switched on, because the chuck throws from one side to the other, there is a little vibration, no more than might be experienced when turning a rough cut piece of timber. To counter this, I have placed a 44 kilo, 90 pound bag of sand on the shelf beneath the lathe. Now the woods I used to construct this chuck were Cooktown ironwood for the slide. It's a really tough solid grained hardwood. For the runners and bearers I used oak soaked in oil. It's an old method used to produce bearings in wind and water mills. And this provides an excellent bearing surface. Now the oak is softer than the Cooktown ironwood and is more likely to wear out first, and it's best that way because it's easier to replace those than the central slide. The cam I turned from lignum vitae, again a tough self-lubricating wood. Even though some of these parts are oiled or self-lubricating, I occasionally rub paraffin wax upon the contact surfaces to give a little extra slip and slide. Before I switch on the lathe, so that you can hear how the chuck sounds in motion, a couple of safety points. Always wear glasses to protect your eyes, and I always wear a face mask which blows clean air across my face to protect my lungs. And with this chuck particularly, always rotate it by hand first to make sure that nothing catches. So I'll put on my glasses and we can listen to how it sounds. As an introduction to this form of turning, I'll show you how to make a simple moulded frame similar to this. To decide on the size of blank which needs to be cut, draw a series of ovals on the faceplate using a felt pen. I'm going to choose the largest of these three ovals. Now, whilst we're looking at this, I just want to illustrate the importance of setting the tool rest so that the tool always makes contact with the work at centre height. So first I'm going to drop the tool rest down, and instead of a tool I'm going to use a pencil, and I'm going to mark a start point here. Let's just tighten that tool rest down, a start point there. Now I'm going to rotate the chuck by hand, pencil on the start point, and mark an ellipse. Raise the tool rest up. So effectively we've increased the height of what would be the tool. Same start point, pencil on the tool rest and rotate the chuck. And there you see we have created two entirely different pathways using the same start point. This should illustrate the importance of keeping the cutting edge of any tool being used at precisely centre height at all times. Otherwise, different cut pathways will overlay previous ones, upsetting the shaping. Now let's have a look at those ovals again. The oval I've chosen is 120mm by 95, 4 3/4 inches by 3 3/4 inches. Now I'm going to trace that shape off. So hold a piece of tracing paper with masking tape over the surface. And I'll bring the tool rest up, which has been reset so that the felt pen marks at centre height. And now quite easily that tracing is taken. That tracing, when I remove it, can be transferred to a piece of wood 22mm thick, 7/8 of an inch thick. Now I'm going to use walnut. In fact, I've already done that. So I transfer it to a block of wood and then cut that blank out. In exactly the same way that a blank for a bowl is cut round, a blank for elliptical turning is cut to match the ellipse which the chuck produces. Now fix that blank on the faceplate. For this, I will use a hot glue gun, but the old method of a layer of glue, then newspaper, second layer of glue, then the object, works extremely well. Whichever method you choose, the blank must be fixed in place so that it falls inside that marked elliptical line. When the blank is firmly fixed, the rebate will be turned, and that is the part in the back of the frame to take the picture. Adjust the tool rest so that a 9mm 3/8 inch gouge cuts precisely at centre height. Rotate the chuck by hand to make sure that nothing catches. Remember the position of the gouge and then we'll switch on and lightly turn the face. But watch for the ghost image when turning. Keep precisely at centre height. So here goes. Now that was a useful experience. Do not feel upset if you find it difficult using a gouge. It is a completely different skill which will take a long time to master, for it is important that the cut remains bang on centre height. For when cutting at centre height, the work is steady, whereas above and below that point you will notice that there is considerably more movement. Do not feel that you have failed if you decide that a round nose tool will do the job. As long as it is sharp and produces fine shavings, then go ahead. After all, you're supposed to be enjoying this. Mark an oval, 15mm in from the edge, that's 5/8 of an inch. There. I've set the tool rest so that the pencil is marking at centre height. So that means I've got to reset the tool rest so that a square end tool cuts at centre height. Now sometimes I feel you need 3 hands to do this. That's about right there. So the tool, when resting on the tool rest, touches the centre. Just put my glasses back on, bring that back, and I'm going to cut on the inside of that line with the square end tool to a depth of 6mm, 1/4 of an inch. Rotate the lathe by hand first, and let's try that. I'm going to cut a wide groove, by the way, so that not just the thickness of the tool, but about 6, maybe 9mm, 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch wide. Nice and lightly, small cuts. Now I've cut the groove, made it quite wide so that the square end tool doesn't grip, made the bottom flat, and it is quarter of an inch, 6mm deep, and I've trimmed off the outer edge as well, so the curve matches the inner shape. Now I've allowed for that, even though it is quite a lot on this side, in the width I've given. And that has now come down to, let's have a look, see, I think it looks like 12mm, half an inch. Oh yes, that's handy, 12mm, half an inch, so that is fine. Now again, it will be noticed that there is one area, the centerline area, where the work is not vibrating madly, where the workpiece is tranquil, the point of tranquility, a point where it is easier to cut. Now aim for that spot, have the tool cutting at center height, and you'll hit that spot sweetly. Let's return to the center area now, and that has to be cut out to the required 6mm quarter inch depth. And it might be a good time to practice with the gouge, because all you have to do is remove the material, and if you happen to make a few mistakes with the gouge, it's not vitally important. If you don't get on too well with the gouge, use the round nose tool. Put on the glasses, and let's give that a try. Rather interestingly in there, you'll see that is the dead centre line of the piece, right in the middle of the ellipse. Now sometimes that area is very difficult to turn away with a gouge, because it's just like carving in a way. You'd have to push it along there and carve the individual piece. So you may wish to reset the tool rest. In fact, you can even do this on the piece, reset the tool rest so that the round nose tool cuts at centre height, and that is exactly centre height there, so you can reset it there and finish off that rebate with the round nose tool. Rotate the chuck to check that it's not catching on anything, and we'll finish that off. When satisfied that the rebate and edge have been well turned, there are three things to do. First of all, mark a datum on the faceplate and on the chuck so that the faceplate can be replaced precisely. Second thing, take a piece of tracing paper and fit it on the work so that the inner rebate can be traced. And the third thing is to remove the faceplate with the work, and then you can take it to the microwave, pop it in there on full power for 7 seconds, and the hot melt glue will be soft enough to enable the work to be pulled away from the faceplate. And just one more screw. Pick that up in a minute, mustn't forget where that is. Before I take this off, I'll just show you the two datum. There they are, so I know which way it goes back together. Here's the work separated from the faceplate. And you'll notice there's still some glue on the work and on the faceplate. So therefore, you can scrape it off if you wish, or peel it off, but remove it whichever way you want to. And then we'll replace the faceplate on the chuck. Now trace onto 1/4 inch 6mm wood, that rebate oval. Now I know I've cut this out quite roughly, it doesn't matter because we're going to have to glue gun it onto the faceplate, and we use those lines to help locate it, and then we have to turn it so that it matches the rebate we have turned on the inside of this workpiece, and then we can push that on top. This 6mm 1/4 inch block, now glued firmly to the faceplate, can be turned to an accurate shape which will fit the rebate in the back of the frame. Now I've set the tool rest so the square end tool will cut at centre height. I'm just going to trim the outside of this and see how close to the size we require it will come. I know we've only taken a little off, but it is a test. We're quite well off there. That's nice because it means we can keep on going and plenty to play with. Rotate. I'm just going to pull that back a bit because it looks a little close to that. Rotate the work. That's good. Now we'll try again. Keep on testing it and cutting and testing until you get a nice snug fit. This will ensure that the oval of the back is centred on the faceplate. Just put that in. Twist that round to give ourselves a bit more distance in. Rotate. You never know when you're going to hit an obstacle you hadn't considered. You don't really want to be too bold with the cut, because if you cut too much off, then it's to start all over again. No, we've still got plenty to go. Rotate for safety. And let's test that. Oh, that's a nice snug fit there. Now, the next thing to do is to apply hot melt glue to this area, the faceplate and the face, so that all parts will be held, so that when the centre is turned out it won't fly out. Alternatively, you could apply glue to this area and leave this dry, fit it on, and then put a couple of very small screws in there, short ones, to hold the centre part on so it doesn't fly out. They can be loosened and the centre portion removed, but the screws have to be short so that they do not go all the way through into the slide. Once the piece has been securely glued to the faceplate, turn the front face clean. I've turned the face off, but now you'll see why I turned this area first. Sometimes it is very difficult to turn closely to the faceplate. You can get pieces breaking out, particularly where the work doesn't seat down absolutely perfectly. So now all I need to do is to turn from here to meet with that edge, and the whole edge will be turned cleanly. Now I've set the tool rest so that the square end tool will cut at centre height. Let's hope we've got it dead on. We'll see now. I've got my glasses on, so we'll switch on. We'll take a preparatory testing cut through the ghost image. What I want to test is to make sure that these cuts are going to coincide, because it is always possible that they may not, because the tool needs to be exactly on the same height as the cut for that pathway there. So we'll continue, see what we can do. The path is being cut all the way around here. That's looking good. It's not always advisable to keep the lathe running too long, because wood is rubbing on wood and it can cause a bit of friction. I think I'm going to stop now, and just, you can hear that creak, I'm going to put some wax on the cam. Just a bit of candle wax on the cam there. And run it round. If it's pushed close to the bearer, pushed round with the bearer underneath, you can catch it on the other side, bring it up with the bearer, and you hear that creak has gone altogether. A bit of lubrication takes it out. So listen for that. If you hear that creak, a bit of candle wax does some world of good. So let's carry on, see if we can continue to cut to meet up. Stop and check regularly. We'll continue in that manner. Now there's that creak again. A bit more wax won't go amiss, but continue in that manner until the whole face is cut flat. Now measure 20 millimeters, 3/4 of an inch in from the edge, and mark an oval round in pencil. Now the reason we've done that is we're marking the opening for the frame. Now on the first rebate we measured 12 millimeters in when we'd got the outside edge truly shaped. 12 millimeters in, half an inch. Then of course if we go in 20 millimeters, 3/4 of an inch, it leaves us with this step or rebate on the inside. So now we'll begin to cut through, and we'll be using the square end tool, and we'll be cutting a wider groove and going through to meet the rebate cut beneath. So on with the glasses and on with the lathe. Now that's rather interesting, because when I looked at that, the point of tranquility was just below that height, so I'm going to adjust it again and look again with the tool and see if we've got that right. Let's have a look now. No, it's lower still. Just make absolutely sure this time. It needs to go just a smidgen lower. And then we'll try and see if we've got it right this time. Check it against the oval, and yes, there you are. It's cutting bang on the oval, so now we'll gently cut in and go through to the rebate on the back. How we're going, that looks okay, but what I'm going to do is just wax the cam, because I could hear it was needing it. Just get some of that wax into there. There's a little bit of lubrication, and also before we go any further I'm just going to test, yes, the bearers are firmly on there, so we're still alright. There's not that much wear yet. If there were some wear, then we'd need to nip up those bearers, pull them in a little closer. Rotate. Yes, that's not coming on too badly. A bit of a creak there, a bit more wax won't go amiss. Lubricating that bearing. Pressed against the bearer. Pull it out before we start. Yes, I'm still alright. I like to check regularly, because if that bearing or bearer isn't firm on the cam, it will start causing problems with the oval pathway. So we've got to go quite a distance in there. We're only 6mm, quarter of an inch in, so let's carry on with the work. put some more wax on the bearings. In fact, sometimes I think I put too much on, but it's better. Oh, there, you can hear it, and it's groaning, it needs some. But I think it's better to have plenty of lubrication on there than too little. In fact, I've got to square up that edge, I can see. And also what I'll do is, as a crude test, measure how far the tool has gone in against my finger. Now that is 11 millimetres. Got 6 on the back. We've got another 3 millimetres, which is about 1/8 of an inch to go. So square up this internal edge and realise we've only got a short distance to go. Just a touch too deep there, but I think it's getting close to through. And just have a look again. Yes, we're still all right. Continue with our cut. Now the cut has broken through to the rebate at the back. But first, before we continue, a little advice. Do not allow the chuck to run for too long, no more than a few minutes. For like a Boy Scout rubbing two sticks together, the bearers, cam, runners and slide, which are rubbing very efficiently, could begin to smoulder, and it would be a great pity to see all that work go up in smoke. The bearers should be adjusted occasionally, so that they touch the cam but are not tight against it, and when rotated by hand the movement should be easy. The bearer on the left, as you can see, has 2 screws which holds it firmly in place, but the bearer on the right has a slot which allows it to be moved forward against the cam when necessary. And another point, always rotate the chuck by hand before switching on the lathe. Now I can't tell you that often enough. It would be disastrous if the tool rest came across the work and you switched on the lathe. The work could be damaged, or worse still, the chuck could be damaged. Now I'm going to show you a cross section of the shape I've chosen to make the frame. And here we see, I'm going to put a little step at the top and a step the other side, which leaves this ring around the edge. And then after that I'm going to work these steps down close to the centre rebate, and then cut this nice deep sweeping curve. For I've seen many old frames and they have that deep curve because it lightens the frame tremendously. Now you may be tempted to curve from this point down to that one. Don't. It makes the frame look heavy. Really generous sweeping curve will lighten it tremendously. You may wish to put a curve on the outer edge also. Now here's another frame which I've turned, and the shaping is more external than internal. You can see the moulding is on the outside rather than sweeping in, but that too can be quite attractive. Next, using a fine square end tool, I'm going to cut that raised ring around the top edge. Now the raised ring is going to be 1/24 of an inch, that's 1 millimetre high, and 1/24 of an inch, 1 millimetre wide. So I'll mark that now and begin to cut it. Should just go in there. I think I can get the next bit there. So, see what I can do here. going to use shadow marks for this. I'm not going to mark them all the way around. Just going to see how they look there, see if I can turn on and just see how that figures. Let's try that. Again, I can see that I need to raise the tool rest up a bit. Try that because we're looking for that point of tranquility there. Now I'm going to cut down into here, the other squaring tool. I'm going to check it on centre height in a minute as it works, so that we can then cut the steps on the inner edge. Of course, I'm going to have to stop every now and again to see how deep I'm going. That's not bad. Now let's see if I can use, yes, I can use that white mark there. When I've reached that white mark, the end of it, I know I'm deep enough. Go a little bit more on that. I'll just straighten up the sides as I go down. Just a fraction more. It is a matter of judgment. You can't always get in there and see precisely because of the movement of the work. Having to judge does make it a little more challenging, which is quite pleasant sometimes. That's about right, so I'm going to do a second step now. That's all we'll need, and then we can turn the curve. Look at that, and remember, take light cuts. Any heavy cuts can sometimes jar and may damage the chuck. Yes, we could do a little bit more on that. It is about deep enough, but it needs to be a bit more defined. It almost comes to feel rather than watching and seeing. Yes, I think that's right. So now we're ready to cut that deep sweeping curve. I'm going to cut that sweeping curve with this round nose tool. Fine cuts, and you should see a few shavings coming off if you're working well. So glasses on, and let's make a start. Off a minute, because I want to check that. Yes, that's coming up quite nicely. You see, even the end grain's cutting well, but hear that creak? That means I'm going to put some more wax on that cam. That's a lovely one, isn't it? Look at that. Yeah, this will take it out. There you are. Right, now that's coming on quite nicely. And now turn on again, and we will continue that cut. Now I've cut into here quite nice and deeply, scooped down and up. It's quite nicely cut there because the tools are kept quite sharp. It makes all the difference. Now I'm going to cut a slight concave curve in the edge here, so it means moving the tool rest round. And you've got to be very wary of doing this because you've got the ghost image of the chuck as it flies past. Sometimes it's not there, like now, and sometimes it is. So be wary. But fortunately we're working in this direction, so we don't need to worry too much. But just as long as we understand what could happen, it'll make all the difference. So using the round nose tool or the gouge, whichever you prefer, we'll cut that slight concave curve. Rotate, not touching, and here we go again. There we are. It's rather amusing because I know when I turn something round on the lathe, I can look along the top edge and see the pure profile. With this, I see confusion on the top edge. If I want to see the pure profile, I have to look straight down the edge here at the front. That's the only place. Now I'm going to glass paper, and then we'll see where we go from there. But even with glass papering, I still wear my spectacles. Right, now move the tool rest. I'm going to move the tool post all the way back. Now when it comes to glass papering, I'm not going to take any of the sharp features off. I'm going to clean up on the inside here and the outer edge. Now watch when I'm glass papering the outer edge here, because you'll see when I'm at the point of tranquility, there'll be very little movement. My hands won't move too much. When I'm above or below, you'll see that movement. Let's watch for that on the edge first. Did you notice when I brought my hands down, they vibrated madly, but there came to a point where it was nice and still, and that was that point of tranquility, that perfect position to cut that I was talking about. Well, I'll carry on with the glass papering. When I finish the glass papering, I'm going to take the piece to the microwave and cook it for as long as it needs to soften the glue, and then I can take the frame off. Of course, I undo the screws and take the whole faceplate with me. So glass paper now. And here we are, hot from the microwave, all the parts. And there is the finished frame, which can now be hand polished. Just remember that the same basic turning techniques apply to oval turnery, as do the same basic safety measures. Wear eye protection, protect your lungs from dust, and keep the lathe speed moderate. Always rotate the lathe by hand before switching on, and I can't say that often enough. Tighten all the screws and nuts before switching on. Don't run the chuck for too long, and fix the workpiece to the faceplate securely. When turning close to the edge of the faceplate, watch your fingers and knuckles, because the ghost image might miss, but the real one won't. And also notice down here, two big G-clamps which hold this main box firmly in place. I hope you've enjoyed making this frame and that you may feel inclined to tackle more elliptical turning. If so, then you'll find more oval projects in my book, Adventures in Wood Turning. I feel that making your own chuck brings you closer to your work, and I really appreciate that feeling of self-sufficiency, and I hope you will too. Enjoy your wood turning.